Welcome to Art IRL 40th birthday celebration. Today, the National Gallery Youth Council is hosting an In Conversation with the Gallery Director, Nick Mitzevich. My name is Massimo Martelli, and I'm a part of the National Gallery Youth Council 2022. I currently live on Ngunnawal Ngambri country, and I am originally from Naarm. I'm a young Caucasian person with brown hair, brown eyes, tortoiseshell glasses, currently sporting a green jumper. I'm joined by my fellow youth councillor, Lara White.
Hi, my name's Lara, and I'm also part of the National Gallery Youth Council for 2022. I'm sitting here with medium-length dark brown hair and red pants and a black turtleneck. So the building where the National Gallery of Australia stands today was designed by Colin Madigan and opened to the public in 1982. The National Gallery is a custodian of 166,000 works of art and holds the largest Australian First Nations art collection in the world. In 2018, the National Gallery appointed Nick Mitzevich as director. He was previously director of the Art Gallery of South Australia for 8 years, and before that, director of the University of Queensland Art Museum in Brisbane and the Newcastle Art Gallery. We invited the director to talk to us today about his ideas and ethos for the National Gallery and his vision for engaging young people with the gallery. So thank you so much, Nick, for joining us.
It's so great to join you both.
Thank you. So first, how did you come into the role of director of the National Gallery of Australia?
35 years ago, I was actually sitting where you two are today. I was really enthusiastic about art and I wanted to be a part of it. I first trained as an artist, thinking that I'd want to be an artist, but an experience on campus at my university changed that. And I started volunteering in a student gallery on campus. And I realised that I loved being in the gallery space. And I really excelled at that, and I felt that that was my place. And so after studying as a teacher, I then made my way to galleries and wanted to be a part of working with artists and the public, and somehow having an artwork behind me and an audience in front of me made me feel really confident. And growing up, I was quite a shy person, and I couldn't imagine speaking to more than 2 people, and that would make me feel nervous. But somehow having an artwork near me and an audience in front that wanted to know more made me feel really comfortable. And so I've spent the last 35 years with an artwork behind or beside me, or an artist next to me, and an audience in front. And so I see my job as a storyteller, connecting people with art, and it's something that's given me such an amazing, rewarding life so far. And working with the National Collection is something that I never thought I would. But the experience I've had working at an artist-run space, a local council, a university gallery, a state gallery, all was training to make me match fit to come to the most significant collection in the country with a really important responsibility of sharing art here in Canberra at the National Gallery, but even more importantly, sharing art across the country and elevating Australian art across the world. And so it's such a big, important job that the responsibility is not lost on me.
Yeah, that's fantastic to sort of understand how what you wanted to do has sort of changed and shifted throughout your life. And I think that's so relatable because so many people, what they want to do sort of shifts and changes throughout their life. And
I never had a plan, except I wanted to work with people and for people that I felt I could do my best, and I felt I could be comfortable and I could stretch myself. And so I always found opportunities that let me do that. And that's kind of what led my path through things rather than a map. I didn't really have a map. No. I trusted my intuition and my judgment, and I took opportunities with organisations and people that I thought was fertile territory, that I could be myself and I could stretch myself.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Fantastic.
And can I tell you both a secret that isn't such a secret?
We won't tell anyone.
When I was asked to apply for this job, I kept on saying I didn't think I was ready because I could understand the gravitas of the role, and I kept on saying that I needed some more time, and I thought I wasn't ready yet. In the end, I was ready. I suppose I wanted to grow into the job, and I seem to have done that now.
Yeah.
So within the role itself, I guess, what are 3 words you would use to describe your vision and your ethos for the National Gallery?
I think being ethical
Yeah.
in the way that you treat people, the audience, your stakeholders, artists, your government supporters, and private individuals. So I think ethics is really important. Yeah. Being ambitious about, not personally, but ambitious about the place of art in the nation. And my job is to elevate art and culture as part of the mainstream discussions about what's important in our society. And the third is to be inclusive and to make sure that we're not guided by one view of history, that history has multiple ways of looking at subjects and reflecting the nature of the community we're in. And so they're the 3 words that kind of sum up how I see my job and the role of leading the National Gallery and the National Collection.
I love that. I think that's great, especially about, I think inclusivity is so important, especially ethics. And I mean, ambition, you can't get anywhere without ambition. Have you had a personal experience that has made you realise the importance of the direction you were taking the National Gallery?
Well, I've always felt art as being something that I felt comfortable with, and given me a sense of purpose. And so how the artists see the world always drives me. And I think we should never, I try never to lose sight of the fact that that's my principal purpose, to amplify what artists are saying about the world or their views on things. And my job is to make sure that the wider public connect with it and not to get in the way of it.
Do you think that artist-led discussions and exhibitions are really important to the gallery?
I think so, and that doesn't mean that you just need to focus on contemporary things.
Yeah.
Living artists have a very interesting take on history and an interesting perspective on the world. I think it's important that the voice of the artist has a role to play in the way you might distill the world and how you make sense of the things you hear and see. And so I want to make sure that art is part of that thinking in people's heads. And so it doesn't mean that you have to live in a gallery. There's lots of ways to make connections with art. For example, our social media channels have a lot of content, and hopefully encourage people to become involved in that if they're not in geographical proximity to the gallery, that there's lots of ways to make art part of your life. So hopefully art can be part of the way that people process what's going on in the world.
What makes the National Gallery and its collection special in an international context?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. One is that we've got a clear story on the history of Australian art. That's one of our principal collecting areas. So we're one of the few specialists in the world that look at Australian art. We have the largest collection of First Nations art in the world, and we feel very proud of that. At the moment, we've got a major exhibition at the National Gallery of Singapore that's showcasing the work of 73 First Nations artists. We could only do that because we've got this rich collection to draw from. And also the National Gallery has a very unique collection of our neighbours. So we've got great holdings of the Pacific, of Asia, but also amazing masterpieces from North America and Europe. So as well as immersing yourself in the history of Australian and First Nations art, there are also some works of art that define history here, like Jackson Pollock's Blue Poles, or Brancusi Birds, or Louise Bourgeois' Coyote. These are works of art that are now part of the history of art. And you can read about the history of art in a book or online, but you can also come into the National Gallery and see the history of art on display.
Yeah, it's incredible to have sort of a collection so varied and place Australia on an international context there. I guess speaking of important pieces of art, the National Gallery is an iconic building and I guess a work of art itself. How do you think the architecture of the National Gallery impacts the experience of visitors?
Well, I think it does have an impact. When the building was conceived and designed, it was developed as an expression of modernity, or being a modern take on the experience. So it started being designed in the late 60s, when the idea of a National Gallery came into being, and then the architects were selected, and the building was conceived in the early 70s and then opened in 82. So there was 10 years of building and planning. So there was a lot of energy put into making a unique statement, and the building at its heart reflected a modern approach, and so the building is quite rigorous and it's like a sculpture. So at times you're not sure if it's architecture or it's a sculpture, and the truth is it's a bit of both. Decoration is stripped out of the building, and it's form that is the most important part. So when you're standing in these vast rooms, the scale and the scope of the architecture is never lost on you. So you're never confused where you are, because the building has such a unique signature. And this year we celebrate the 40th anniversary of opening, and still today I find the building so fascinating, and it feels so contemporary because it had such a unique signature from the very beginning.
Absolutely.
I think also galleries can be often fairly intimidating places, and I think it doesn't feel that way. It actually invites you in. Even though it is concrete and it's harsh, it's actually inviting and sort of warm.
It's not a traditional set of gallery rooms. It's an open journey that you flow through, and so you can decide which way you go. Sometimes it might cause you to get a bit lost, but I actually like taking a path that isn't laid out for you. So there's not a series of rooms that follow on from each other. There's a series of paths that you lead, and you can go up ramps, or you can go downstairs. You can go into huge big spaces or intimate ones. And so the building sort of pulls you through in different ways.
Yeah, I was going to say, I never mind getting lost in the gallery. What do you hope the gallery will look like in another 40 years?
Oh, that's so interesting. Well, I hope the integrity of the architecture remains, because Colin Madigan's vision here was quite unique, and I hope that that we continue to maintain the architectural integrity of the building, and we continue to create amazing opportunities for people to visit and appreciate both the building and the sculpture garden. And I'm really excited about the sculpture garden, because we've commissioned amazing new work for 2024 by the Australian artist Lindy Lee. So I hope the sculpture garden in 40 years' time continues to add amazing works by both Australian, First Nations artists and artists from around the world. So the experience of visiting isn't just inside the building, that the experience is also inside and out. And the outside rooms continue to be filled with lots of new commissioned sculpture, because we've got 3 hectares of 30,000 square metres around the building. So we've got lots of room to continue to expand the sculpture garden, and I hope that will become a really important part of the National Gallery in 40 years' time.
Speaking of, I guess, galleries in the future, what do you think the future of the institutions of art galleries is?
Well, I think the experience of seeing art in a gallery will never diminish, because artists make works of art that have a connection between you and the object. And even if it's a digital born work, it's about the experience of the space and the experience of how you interact with the work. And so I think galleries will always be an important place to come and experience art, and particularly art in the 21st century is very much about experiential things. That will always, I think, be an important element. But galleries will more and more become more open. So broadcasting digital content, helping people understand art will become an important feature. And also sharing art around the country, I think, will also be an important part of the future. There's lots of great particularly regional galleries across Australia, and I hope in the next 40 years we develop a much more comprehensive program of sharing the national collection.
With viewers and audiences gradually moving digital, how do you think this poses a threat and an opportunity for conventional physical gallery spaces and institutions?
I'm maybe traditional or old-fashioned because I always think the experience of being with a work of art is really important. And even if artists work in moving image, they carefully construct the environment, the space, the lighting level, the size of a projection, the way you enter and exit, how they convey a feeling. And so I think that could never be diminished. I think that digital technology and streaming helps us understand art a little better, helps us get a more rounded knowledge. But the experience of being within an artwork or seeing an artwork will always endure because artists make works to have a visual impact. And screen-based things are mainly limited, except if something is born for a digital screen. That's different. But my job is to look after works of art that are made for an experience. And that's why collecting and developing the national collection continues to be important. Housing it and putting it on display or putting it on the road to tour where people come and visit will always be important.
I completely agree. I think it's particularly over COVID, we were sort of starved of this physical space, and as much as it was fantastic that galleries moved online and that we could view works online, it was so good to get back into the gallery and actually, be in the presence of a great artwork.
And also, being in a gallery is also a social experience.
Yeah.
I know that I rarely come to a gallery without my family or my friends. And inherently, a visit to the gallery is a social experience. And that's another reason why I think galleries are so important for the future, because connecting people together and nurturing a sense of community is an important part of the art experience.
For sure, couldn't agree more.
Yeah, it's so important to build that community. I know the conversations I've had with people in galleries are just really enriching and fantastic to have. So I guess what kind of role does philanthropy play in the gallery's ability to engage young people?
Well, philanthropy is really an important part of what we do. Over my whole career, I've worked with very generous individuals that want to help make things more accessible. Generally, philanthropists are motivated because they themselves have had a great art experience in their lives, and they want to make sure that there are lots of experiences for others, particularly young people. And so I always think philanthropy drives ambition, and it also opens doors. And so I love working with private individuals and foundations because their support means I can open another door that helps people walk into the art experience, and it makes things happen. And so the work that we do in the digital space, the work we do in education and learning, and the programs for young people are all funded by passionate private individuals that want to unlock and open a door for people to easily step into and to have an art experience. It's very rewarding working with private philanthropists. It's the part of my job I think I really love the most, is bringing that connection together. You can never force or convince or cajole anyone to become a philanthropist. It's inherently in them. But what you can do is make it easy, connect the dots, and make sure that they can contribute to society and make it a more rewarding place for everyone.
Fantastic.
And it's so important to open those doors to younger people and get them into the gallery so they can experience the national collection.
The more different doorways we can open, the more opportunities that people have. And sometimes the doorway might be online. It might be on social media. It might be a physical visit. It might be a visit to a sports field that's the launch pad for Patricia Biccinini's Skyways. It could be any doorway. It's just important that it is a doorway to connecting with art. And I'm really excited that over the last few years we've created more doorways for young people particularly to step through, and it doesn't have to be in the building. Yeah. And as I said, it could be on a sports field and you're looking up. It could be that you're in your backyard and you see something very odd fly by. And I think those things are really important.
Yeah. Well, hopefully there's more to come.
There's much more to come.
Good, can't wait.
Nick Mitzevich, thank you so much for joining us today to chat about all things art and your vision for the gallery. It's so important to have conversations like this and to engage young people with the gallery. So we really appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Thank you, and thank you for your passion, and thank you for opening another doorway for others to learn a little bit more about art.
Thank you. Before we wrap up, we'd also just like to say a quick thank you to Tim Fairfax. All youth programs are made possible because of his generous support.
Tim and Gina Fairfax are an amazing philanthropist. They have such huge hearts and they want to make the community a better, richer place through art. And I'm so inspired by the way they support so many activities here at the National Gallery, but also so many other places across the country. Thank you so much to Tim and Gina.
Thank you.